You see a lot of videos from advisors here on YouTube of retiring with a million, 2 million, $3 million. I'm guilty of it too. But what if you have like 500 grand? Can you retire early at 58 with $500,000? Today, I'm going to break down a full case study for you to show you if that's closer to your situation. So, there's an old adage, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. It's very true. Indirectly, what I think it's saying is this: it doesn't matter how much you make if your expenses equal every last dollar that you make. What if you made $1 million a year? Well, that sounds great. What if it cost you $1 million a year to live? You'd be paycheck to paycheck, just with a very, very large paycheck. Now, that example is a bit over the top, but I say it for two reasons. One, I've got a ton of clients who did the right things for a lot of years. They lived below their means, they saved, they invested, they never made anywhere near that kind of money, and they've gone on to have very comfortable, happy retirements. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. Second, I bring it up to say that anyone can retire on almost any dollar amount at almost any time, provided that their expenses are low enough. Keep that in mind as I go through the case study here. Today, we're going to tell the story of Stanley and Terry Hudson. They're both 58 years old and they're sick of their jobs. They've put away $500,000 in their retirement accounts and they are itching to retire. Let's see how it checks out. So, to start, we'll say that Stanley is a paper salesman at Dunder Mifflin. He makes $60,000 a year, and his wife Terry, she's an interior decorator. She makes $50,000 a year. You can see their asset map here. I've got it up on the screen. Combined household income is $110,000 a year. That would be netting about $6,500 per month after taxes, but they actually live on a good bit less than that because they've been socking away money into their retirement accounts these last few years to try to get their balances built up so that they can go ahead and retire early. And so they actually live on about $4,000 per month. Now, as a rule of thumb, most planners will say that you want to replace around 70% of your pre retirement income. That isn't always accurate. Everything is always specific to you. If you're like Stanley, and at this point you're living well below your means because you've paid off all of your debt, you've got money going to your retirement accounts, your savings accounts, etc., and you make $100,000 a year, in reality, maybe $3,500 per month actually makes its way into the checking account because of all those deposits to the retirement accounts and all of that other stuff. You don't need to replace 70% of $100,000. So as we take a look around the asset map, you can see that it's not terrible. They've got some assets put away. They've done some protecting. We can see up at the top here, term life insurance. They've both got, boy, that was a really ugly scribble. They've both got $300,000 in life insurance, which will cover each other for a period of time. As we said, Stanley works for Dunder Mifflin. He makes $60,000 a year. Terry's over here. She's making $50,000 a year as an interior designer. And as far as assets, Terry's got $200,000 in her 401k. Stanley's got $300,000 in his 401k, and then they've got $25,000 in the savings and the Hudson family home, $300,000. We're not going to use that to fund their goals. They need a place to live. They're not planning on selling it or downsizing it. So we want to have it listed on the map, but it's not going to help fund retirement here. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's start putting together the retirement plan. So here we go. Step number one in a retirement plan, I talk about it all the time, is what do you want to have happen? What are your goals for retirement? Now, this is a very simple one. Most of them don't look like this, but in this case, they're just looking for no longer working and having a quiet lifestyle. Stanley Hudson, Dunder Mifflin, remember what he do when he retired? He sat on the front porch and whittled. That's what he wants. He just wants to kind of hang out. He doesn't want to have to go to work. And so we've got the expectation up here. He just wants to hang out and have a nice, quiet retirement. What resources is it going to take to do that? Let's get into that next. Now we got to start to put together the plan to see how it would work. So if they both retired now, what are we planning for? Both of them retiring today at age 58. We need a plan for a long retirement. We're estimating that Stanley will make it to 91. Terry's going to make it to 93. That's longer than your run-of-the-mill 30-year time frame. So that's going to create a little bit of a challenge for us, but we'll walk through that as we get there. Now, as we move on to what it is that they want, as I said, pretty basic scenario here. We're looking for retirement income to meet the bills, and we're looking to cover healthcare costs specifically because they're going early. And so we're not going to add in a lot of these other things. There's plenty of stuff. Do you want to move to another state? Do you want to leave money to the kids? Do you plan to buy a boat? All of these goals could be filled in for somebody, but in this case, to keep it nice and easy, they just want to stop working. Can they do it? What are we solving for? $3,500 a month in base retirement income, adjusted up for inflation over time to start right now to start at age 58. And then healthcare expense. We're estimating almost $10,000 a year in healthcare costs until they get to Medicare age. Once they get to Medicare age, we're looking at around $5,000 a year out of pocket in addition. And then it'll slim down for the last 2 years of the plan, which would be Stanley has passed away, Terry's still here. And so now we've got Medicare supplement, etc., for one. Now, important to note that all of these numbers that you're looking at are today numbers. In the plan, they won't be. In the plan, they're going to be adjusted for inflation, but we want to plan in terms of what you know today. And so we're looking at costs in today dollars. Now let's move on to the next stage of retirement planning. We talk about it all the time. First, what do you want to have happen? I just don't want to work anymore. What comes next? What's the second part? Well, the second part is, what are you going to have coming in income? You see me do this all the time on the channel. What do you have coming in every month? What do you have going out every month? Well, what's Stanley and Terry going to have coming in? Let's take a look at that. They're going to have Social Security. We want Stanley to hold off on requesting his Social Security. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge to go retire at 58, not take Social Security to 67, but there's a reason for that. We need to create a higher benefit so that if he does pass away, we haven't locked in too low benefits. Even though they both want to retire early, if they both elect Social Security early, it's beneficial from a standpoint of it's not going to take as much from the portfolio because you're going to have a shorter gap to bridge between the time that you retire and the time that you get to taking Social Security. But the trade-off for that is locking in that lower benefit. It's okay if one of them locks in the benefit, Terry can lock it in, and then maybe Stanley can claim off of her and allow his benefit to defer. That's a strategy we can look at, but we can't have them both lock in at 62 because that's going to impact both of their lifetimes in perpetuity. So we're going to try and stretch Stanley to full retirement age. Not going to wait all the way to 70. We're going to wait to at least 67. Terry's going to go ahead and elect Social Security as early as she can at 62 to help minimize the time we've got to bridge that gap. Now, speaking of a bridge, they don't have the traditional bridge, the non-retirement investment account. If this situation is you, if you're looking to retire early, get yourself one of those, a non-qualified brokerage account. It can provide a tax-efficient way to access money prior to 59 and a half. It also allows a lot of tax flexibility for things like Roth conversions. In this case, because the balance is $500,000 and they're going to need to use that money to create retirement income, Roth conversions aren't really a conversation. But in a normal scenario where you're looking to retire early, it would be great if they had funded after-tax retirement money in a non-retirement vehicle, a non-qualified account, because they could access it. It provides more flexibility to getting them to a more normal retirement age. As a result, we're going to need to look at the rule of 55. You may remember the rule of 55 says if you retire after age 55 but before 59 and a half, you can access money from the 401k of the company you've separated from. There's some rules there. I did a video about it. I'll link it later, but it allows you to draw money without the 10% early distribution penalty. We're going to have to access that here if they retire at 58. So that's going to be big issue number one. We've got to get them to Social Security age without running too much of the portfolio out. And then the second one, healthcare. Get them to Medicare without breaking the bank. Now we're going to dive into how it looks. I'll tell you right off the bat, the situation's going to be a little bit thin. It would be made vastly better by working a little bit longer, having a little bit more in assets. We'll get into that here in a second as we start to play around with things, but let's look at it just as they would like it to happen. I want to retire today. I don't want to work anymore. I need this much money. Can I do it? So here we have it. We're up to what's called the Monte Carlo simulation. This is going to run 1,000 different scenarios given the input that we put in, how much money they need, when they want to retire, how long they're going to live, to see how many of those scenarios they can actually make it through without running out of money. Let's press the button and see how the numbers look. Kind of to be expected. 16% of the time it worked out in their favor. Like I said, pretty thin scenario. And so now the question becomes, if I'm sitting here with Stanley and Terry, I know that you don't want to work anymore. It's a pretty big gamble. I would not recommend retiring with a 16% probability of success, but let's start to look at what we can do to modify that, to make that a more sustainable situation. So here we go. We've come into what's called the play zone. And so we're going to start to play with some things. We're going to see what happens to those probabilities if we spend a little bit less, if we work a little bit more, if we can continue to work and save a little before we would tap into the retirement. So the first thing I want to check, what happens if we work a little bit longer? And so let's bump both of them up for one more year. Maybe they can do one more year. Let's see, that gets us to 41%. So we're sitting here at 41%. We know that that's not going to cut it. And so the question becomes, well, how much longer do I need to work? Or the other lever I can pull, how can I spend less? The last thing they might be able to do to make this more reasonable would be downsizing the house, although that comes with its own set of issues. And so for today, we're going to keep this very simple and just say, how much longer do you need to work to get to a sustainable scenario? Or how much would you have to cut back on the spend? What could you do without that would allow you to retire at 58, 59, 60 years old instead of working to 65, 66, 67? What are those extra 5 years worth for you? And so here, if we start playing around with some things a little bit more, let's say that we're going to cut the expenses down 42.5 a year to $38,000 per year. That gives a really good bump. That gets you up to 69%. And then last bit of business, I bet this will push us over the top. What if Stanley goes one more year? What if Stanley goes to 60? It's one less year you're going to have to draw from the portfolio. And there you have it, 82%. So a far more sustainable scenario for them. They can't get there today at 58 and just walk out the door. But if he goes 2 more years to age 60, she goes 1 more year, and they find a way to trim just a little bit of expenses, they're able to get into a far more likely scenario of success for their retirement. Now, that's certainly better working till 60 than 65, 66, 67. If you're sitting there on $500,000 at 58 years old and you're putting good money away and you don't need a large amount of income and you plan to go till normal retirement age, you're probably going to be in really good shape. But you also might be able to go earlier. That's the point of the video here, is that you need to look at things like this and see how your situation looks so that you can figure out, can I retire sooner than I thought? And if so, is it more valuable to me to do that, or is it more valuable for me to continue on to the plan of going to full retirement age or whatever the case may be? I see lots of folks who wait all the way to full retirement age because they've decided that that's what they should do and they think that that's the smart move, and they trade away a lot of good years of what could be retirement for assets that they don't actually need. It creates more money for them, but at what point is the trade-off no longer worth it, where you could say, hey, I'd rather have that time to be my own, to do what it is that I want to do, than to trade that time for more money that I'm not actually going to use. Ultimately, that's what it's about. That's the point of all of these videos, whether it's 500,000, a million, $2 million. It's how much do I have to have put away so that I can buy back my freedom? I can buy my own time. I can live the life that I want to live for as long as possible in retirement. I hope that you found the video a little bit interesting today to get to kind of peek behind the curtain. I think I'm going to start to do more of these. It seems like folks like to watch them. And so we'll come up with some other scenarios and get them up. In the meantime, if you're looking to learn more about retirement planning on YouTube, I've got a great video for you. I'm going to put it right over here.